بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه وبعد اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Welcome back to another session of Ask Joe Bradford. This is a special Ramadan session. Most of your questions this time were about fasting and Zakat. And so we're going to go over those questions. I've written them down today. We said that we're going to try and do this every Thursday or every other Thursday. Quite frankly, I had been traveling the last 2 weeks, and so I didn't have a stable connection in order to upload something. So if you were anticipating that and you had questions, I do apologize. Do be sure to submit the questions. Look out for a post every Thursday on Twitter or Facebook. Submit your questions there, and I'll be sure to get to them. Today, the first question is, I am ill and I cannot fast. Is it permissible for me to pay for every day that I miss? This is a very good question, and it depends largely upon the type of illness that you have. So if you have a chronic illness in which you are unable to fast now and unable to fast for the foreseeable future, then it is permissible for you to pay for every day that you miss. And you'll essentially pay the amount of money or feed a poor person. So the fundamental idea is that you feed a poor person for every day in which you miss. If you want to give money to someone, that they will be your wakil, your agent, and they will feed a poor person for you, like a soup kitchen or a homeless shelter, or people that have an orphanage or whatever, that is acceptable as well. But you're not supposed to just give cash, but you are supposed to feed a poor person or buy them the food that they can subsist with for one day. So number one, if you have a chronic illness, which la yurja bur'uhu, as they say, it is not expected to heal anytime soon, then you can take this dispensation. If you have an illness which has the hopes of being healed in the foreseeable future, then in this case you may not pay or may not feed for every day, and instead you simply break your fast, and then later on when you're better, when you're feeling better, then you can make up that fast. Now, let's say that a person has, may Allah cure those who have it, Crohn's disease, and they can't fast because they have to take medicine throughout the day, or they have severe diabetes, or they have, for example, a heart condition and they have to take medicine throughout the day. That's a chronic illness which is not curable in the foreseeable future. It's something that's going to be with them for a long time, and therefore they would be able to pay for each day or feed for each day. Person who has, for example, severe influenza may break their fast, but would not be able to pay for each of those days. Why? Because eventually influenza, the flu, will go away with antibiotics or with time and liquids and so on and so forth. So there's a difference between those two. What about women who are pregnant and breastfeeding? I wrote an article about this on joebradford.net. You can go there and see the details. Another question someone asked. I read that in Simple Zakat Guide about paying Zakat on a Roth IRA. So, how do you pay Zakat on a Roth IRA? Now, a Roth IRA is an individual retirement account that you pay money into, and it is invested for you, and then you withdraw it later on in life. Now, the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA is that a traditional IRA you pay in after tax, and a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, the Roth IRA you will pay in after tax. Traditional IRA we will pay in before tax. So what does this mean? That you'll pay your taxes first, then the money you put in your Roth IRA is going to be taxed. Now, this has the differences between the traditional and the Roth have an effect on how you're able to withdraw and how you're able to control those funds. So because you were not taxed in the traditional IRA, you are penalized if you withdraw at any time before you retire. you will be penalized if you withdraw any time before you retire, and obviously you would be taxed on that withdrawal as well. In a Roth IRA, if you have had the IRA for 5 years or less, you will be penalized because you are taking your money out too early, not because you have not been taxed. And if you have had it for 5 years or more, then you will not be penalized. But you will be taxed on the capital because you had not paid taxes before, and your earnings you will not be taxed on, but you may be penalized on. And there's details that are there. So you can go to a website like Schwab, and they'll tell you all the details there. So how does this affect the way that you pay zakat? Well, on those funds that you have the ability to withdraw without penalty, then you have control over those funds, and therefore you will pay zakat on those, meaning that your capital, you would pay zakat on that capital as long as you're not being penalized and you can withdraw it at any time. Your earnings, on the other hand, is something completely different. You're supposed to wait to withdraw your earnings until retirement. And so there's some more details on that on my website, and as well as in Simple Zakat Guide, and I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, let me know, and I'll be glad to do a detailed write-up, or even more detailed write-up, and clarify that for you. Another person asks, I have savings that I have been saving for tuition and fees. Do I have to pay zakat on those or not? And the answer is yes, you do. Any liquid wealth that you have with you, you must pay zakat on it. Doesn't matter if you're saving it for a specific purpose or not. If you want to not pay zakat on it, then you should prepay your tuition and your fees. But as long as you have access to that money and it is liquid and it is sitting with you, then you must pay zakat on that wealth. If it's in your possession, then you have to pay zakat on that wealth. Someone asked about paying zakat to research institutions and educational initiatives. How is this possible? Well, to me, there a lot of those who advocate for such things will say that fi sabilillah, in God's path, is very broad, and anything that brings about the greatness of God's name is considered fi sabilillah. Da'wah and calling to God's path is one of them, and therefore research institutions, educational initiatives, schools, so on and so forth, they all fall under this. And the problem is that this is like throwing the kitchen sink at the problem. It's way too broad. It's ripe for abuse. I think that if you want to give your zakat for an educational institution, then what are they exactly doing? Are they producing material that softens people's hearts towards Islam, that clarifies Islam? Then maybe. But if they're simply doing it because they have a student body or they have people to pay and they need cash for that, then there's some questions there as to when does the poor person actually take ownership of the zakat funds, and then how is it paid for them, and is that person an agent for them, or are they taking it as a zakat eligible collector and distributor? Most of them are not. Generally, I have a lot of reservations about that and those type of things, and I personally would only allow for schools and other things to take zakat when they have excessive debts, which would cause the school to shut down and would cause problems in their operations, or they have a proven track record of admitting students that are poor and assisting those students in their state so that they can gain an Islamic education. Generally, however, all of these things go back to a case-by-case basis. We should not give one blanket, one generalized ruling, because again, then it becomes ripe for abuse. Okay, someone asked, what about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? Well, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are all the rage now. Everybody wants to invest in them. I personally would advise you, just from the standpoint, an ethical standpoint, to stay away from most of them. A lot of these cryptocurrencies are pump and dump schemes. People start them, they start to mine them, they get a whole bunch of people in there, and then they pull out their money and then everything falls apart. So There's a lot more research that needs to be done on them. Um, People claim that they don't have the pitfalls of centralized banking currencies, but just as central bank currencies have seigniorage, which is a form of essentially riba, essentially interest, which is earned on the production or the creation of money, then Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have the same thing, except it's not earned by a central or reserve bank. It's earned by the individual. So my good friend and teacher Sheikh Abdul Qadir Amour of Algeria, he's actually writing a paper on this right now, and I will consult with him and see what he has come up to. I personally have not had the time to do research on these issues yet, but I will consult with him and see what he says, and if I'm able to get his feedback and research, then I will put it out to you guys and let you know what he says. Excuse me. Someone else asked, I have zakat, I have 5K at the beginning of the year. By the end of the year, I have 10K. Do I pay zakat on my 5K or on my 10K? You pay zakat on the total amount of liquid wealth that you have, as long as it has been more than the nisab for a year. So the nisab these days is about $400. So if you have $400 or more at any time throughout the year and it remains over $400, then let's say you get from Ramadan the 1st of 2016 to Ramadan the 1st of 2017, then on Ramadan the 1st of 2017, you look at your total assets altogether and you pay zakat on that amount, not just on the amount that came before. Now there are two ways to calculate your zakat. There's a cash and accrual, basically. It's like accounting. So if you have multiple streams of income and multiple streams of expenses and payables, sometimes it's better to have, and those are considerably large, sometimes it's better to give each of those streams of income their own zakat year. So maybe you get paid in February, a lump sum, and you get paid in August a lump sum. And you know that by deducting one from the other, you're going to harm yourself in your business. It's going to be a problem for you with accounting, with your payables, with with your expenses, so on and so forth. It is permissible to treat them as two separate amounts of money with two separate zakat years, but you would be paying your zakat twice a year, once on the amount for February, once on the amount for August. The other way is that you simply roll everything up together once a year. You'll be prepaying on some of it, post-paying on some of it, but it will be a lot easier for you if you have many small streams of income or if you just are a salaried employee. And that brings us to the next question. What do we use as the nisab, which I generally translate as the minimum liability amount for zakat? During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they had both gold and silver was the most predominant currency at that time. And all of the ahadith that mention the nisab, actually most of the ahadith that mention the nisab, except for one or two, actually always mention it in silver. And because of that, and because of the fact that the nisab for silver is much lower than gold, I advocate the use of silver for three reasons. Number one, the reasons that I just mentioned, that it was what was the predominant currency at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Number two, the idea behind zakat is giving money for the benefit of the poor. And when we have more people paying zakat because the nisab is lower, then we have more poor people that are going to be benefited. And then number three, because we have silver as the nisab and it is lower, we have more people practicing an entire pillar of Islam, feeling part and parcel of the Muslim community, that they are contributing to the benefit and the betterment of the community, and that they are complete in their belief. They're not just sticking to the shahada and prayer, but fasting, but they're, they have the shahada, the prayer, they're fasting, their zakah, and then they're waiting to make hajj. And that has a psychological effect on our community as well, to make sure that we feel that we are, really building that building of Islam in our hearts upon all five pillars. Someone else asks that he gets paid quarterly. It's a good question. He gets paid quarterly, however, his expenses are monthly. How does he calculate his zakat? Well, excuse me. If you are paid quarterly, then you're going to pay, and you're only going to calculate you're only going to deduct your immediate expenses, which means if you have expenses which are monthly, you deduct 1 month. If you have they're bi-weekly, you deduct 2 weeks. If they are quarterly, you'll deduct a quarter. If they're yearly, you deduct a year. If they're due during the time that you're paying zakat. If they're not due, then you don't deduct them. So even if you're paid quarterly, paid yearly, paid monthly, you're only going to deduct your immediate liabilities based upon the immediacy of those liabilities. Another person asked, how do I pay zakat yearly when the Hijri calendar moves up 10 days per year? Well, this is actually a very good question. It seems odd at first, but it's actually a very good question. The calendar, the Muslim calendar, the Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar, and it is not inculturated. It is not aligned with the solar calendar. It actually moves throughout the year. So the year actually moves up by 10.5 to 11 days a year. What does that mean? That means that Ramadan moves throughout the year over a period of time. Interesting point of benefit that I heard recently while I was in Medina from one of my friends was that if you look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the first Ramadan was fasted in the second year of the Hijrah, and at that time it happened in the Ramadan coincided with about November of the solar year. By the 10th year of the Hijrah, the last Ramadan the Prophet ﷺ fasted, Ramadan coincided with, in the second year of the Hijrah, it coincided with February, and in the 10th year of the Hijrah, it coincided with November, which means it was moving up, right, throughout the year. So that gives you an indication as well about all those ahadith about the Prophet ﷺ praying so long at night, because the nights were just naturally longer. So you can understand that in the short summer nights, you might want to contextualize. And in fact, many of the Salaf, if you look at the athar about that, they would pray differently in the summer than they did in the winter because of their needs and their sleep schedule and things like that. Which really shows us that sometimes this insistence on praying 20 rak'ah when we have an extremely short night is extremely overburdening. And Umar was praying 20 because, quite frankly, the nights were longer at that time. And that is not necessarily an obligation or something that we must do. So, if you pay, back to zakat, if you pay your zakat according to the Hijri year, you have nothing to worry about. All you do is you pick one day during the Hijri year. Some people pay during Ramadan. Some people pay during the first 10 days of the Hijjah, waiting up to Hajj. Some people pay during the first 10 days of Muharram. And in general, you pick a day off that calendar and you pay on that day. And so even though the calendar is moving up 10 days relative to the solar calendar, in reality, it in and of itself is a lunar calendar and it's stable. What if, however, I want to pay according to the solar calendar, to the Gregorian calendar? Well, the Gregorian calendar, as we said, is 10.5 to 11 days longer than the solar calendar. And what that means is I have to pay 2.578%, not 2.5%. 2.5% you pay if you use the lunar calendar. 2.578% you pay if you use the solar calendar. Why? Because of the extra days that are mentioned there that are added on to the solar calendar. You want to make up for that difference. You don't want to fall behind. Next question. Where can I find Next question was student loans. Someone asked me about student loans, and I think I have answered this before in another video, but I will answer it again here. Someone says, I have no choice except to take a student loan. Is it permissible for me to do so? Well, the question is, are you a successful student that has the ability to succeed in your education? Yes. Is it a necessity that Muslims succeed in their education so that they can succeed in their in gainful employment and they can build stable, successful communities? Yes, it is. The Prophet ﷺ said, in the hadith is narrated by Daraqutni, Al-Islamu ya'lu wa la yu'la. Islam succeeds, it is not succeeded. Therefore, when you are faced with an issue in which, if you do not take, or if you are not able to succeed, you will utterly fall behind in almost everything that you do, it becomes permissible in this case for you, out of necessity, to take a student loan for several reasons. Number one, there are no viable alternatives left for you. But there's a caveat there. Number one, you need to try and work and pay your tuition up to your ability. Number two, you should try to qualify for as many grants, special programs that you can, so that you don't have to go into debt. And then number three, you should only take as much student debt as is needed. You should not max out. And then number four, you should be trying to pay down that student debt, that student loan, as fast as possible, or qualify for programs in which your student loan would be forgiven. So in the face of no alternative, and in the face of the necessity of having a strong, successful, educated community, then it becomes permissible in this instance for somebody who is in that situation to take a student loan. Now, I've heard all kinds of, ridiculous opinions about student loans, and people, being extremely unbending about this issue. And there's a difference between a loan which is taken from a government agency and a loan which is taken from a private lender. And there's no doubt that this issue is found in the books of fiqh, especially for someone who pays taxes in a representative government. Another issue is that, excuse me, another issue here is that, not all of us have parents that can sell their homes or mortgage their homes and take out a loan for us. And to suggest that our parents would give up their domicile in order to educate us is, quite frankly, utterly ridiculous. Because number one, not all of us have that, have parents that have homes and that are able to do that. And then number two, that's making them endanger themselves for the sake of us, which may be noble, but it's obviously not necessary, and it's obviously not something that they would need to do. We have a personal responsibility to work as hard as we can to take care of our tuition, and then when we can't and we are in a necessity to complete, then we can use what's available to us: grants, scholarships, if we need student loans. And then I want to tell you about a program which I have advised on in the past, and I'm in constant contact with these guys, and the guys and girls, they do great work, and it is a community-based initiative called A Continuous Charity. I believe it's acc.org or acontinuouscharity.org. What do? They take money that is given to them in charity by former students. They pay off the student loans of people that are in debt, and then those people pay it back. And sometimes they pay back more, sometimes they pay back whatever they can, but they help Muslim students get out of debt. There's another program that I was introduced to in Boston, and I am drawing a blank on the name right now, but I will post a link to it when I find the business card in the comments. And it essentially is a program that when you get employed will make part of your employment package something that will pay off your student debts for you, just like your employer invests in a 401k for you. Like your employer would invest in paying off your student loans or your student debt. So I will get that information as well. The guy that I met was really excited about the possibilities of the project, and I was really excited to hear about it. I'm just drawing a blank right now on camera. So I will get that information. I will drop it in the comments for you. And then lastly, someone said, where can I find the Zakat seminar that you did with Penny Appeal recently? Well, if you didn't know, this month of Ramadan, I'm acting as Zakat advisor for PennyAppealUSA. PennyAppealUSA is a charity which seeks to eradicate poverty in innovative ways and create sustainable communities that can become better parts of the societies that they live in. And if you want to learn more about PennyAppealUSA, go to their website. If you want to see the Zakat webinar, go to PennyAppealUSA.org/Zakat webinar, ZAKAT webinar. Now, what you'll do is you'll put your email address in there. You'll be taken to a page where you can see the webinar, and you will actually get an autoresponder email, and you will be able to email me personally with your Zakat questions. Meaning that if there's a question that you don't want to ask over Facebook or Twitter because it's quite involved, then it's a free service that you can get in contact with me personally, and I will walk you through calculating your Zakat for this year. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody that's out there that's looking for something like this, and I'm glad that I'm being able to work with Penny Appeal USA this year and provide this service for them. So please take advantage of that. PennyAppealUSA.org/Zakat webinar. And that is it. And so I hope that your questions were answered. And inshallah ta'ala, I will see you next Thursday, bi'idhnillah, for another one of these. Actually, not next Thursday, the Thursday after next, because next weekend we're going to be dealing with coming up to Eid and so on and so forth. So I will see you not next Thursday, but the Thursday after next. We'll be doing these bi-weekly from now on, inshallah. And jazakallah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.